All right. Hello, everybody. This is our August Radical Family Farms CSA cooking class with Henry Sue. He is going to be working on his famous Jade dumpling recipe. He shared it before with us for a Dumplings for Black Farmers event. And he is going to share it with us for now. And he's going to talk a little bit about the cultural significance and how the dumpling ties to his family, heritage, and all of the different processes and ingredients it takes to put this together. So when Henry gets back, you will get started. And if anybody has any questions, you can just feel free to unmute yourself and ask. It can be pretty casual.
Hi.
Hi.
Should I start?
Yeah, just start.
Okay. Thanks for joining. My name's Henry Sue. I am a member of the CSA as well with the rest of you. And just a really quick kind of introduction. I first met Leslie probably through social media and Radical Family Farms. And our big connection was my obsession with and looking for the Taiwanese cabbage, which is that kind of flat, large cabbage, which you may or may not have received through the CSA or already know about. The other connection that we have is this kind of is the lobo, which is the radish, which is kind of what we are focusing on today. Today's recipe in Minnan dialect, which is the Hokkien of Taiwan, which is Southern Min or Southern Fujian province, which is the predominant language in Taiwan, which the prominent local dialect that people refer to as Taiwanese. And we call this dumpling chu kak ge, which you already gotten through your email. And the other name for it is cawa gue. So chu kak ge is similar to gue, which maybe you've seen a lot out and about. The Hokkien who migrated from mainland China to Southeast Asia, for example, are really well known for their gues. There's several different kinds, and quite often it's, or for the most part, it's rice mochi style or rice cake. And this particular dumpling that we're going to be making today is a gue, and the names are kind of confusing. It's chu kak ge or cornerstone, which is what I've written in the recipe. And it's like a lot of speculation about the terminology where this word comes from. But chu kak and then tawa gue. Tawa gue means grass dumpling, but essentially it needs some kind of herb. So whether you're using stinging nettle, which is what I'm going to be using today, which I already have a puree made out of from some nettle that I got from Radical Family Farms. And I've had it frozen now for a week. And yes, it's defrosted. But the traditional way to do this dumpling is with mugwort or cudweed, which I've never gotten my hands on. And I do have some mugwort downstairs in a pot, but I didn't use it for today or bring it up to show you. But in any case, the idea behind this dumpling is that it's herbaceous, and that weed or grass that's used in the dumpling dough, the reason it's called cornerstone apparently is it's like outside. These are weeds that you find by the house, so they grow along the edge, or tawakwe, which just means grass. So whatever kind of herbs you have can be good. So the other thing about this dumpling, and while we're doing this, because we only have an hour, and I thought I was gonna have all this stuff done before we met, but I didn't. So we are doing this dumpling, the main ingredient is, I don't know if it's easy to see because it's blown out a little bit, but I'm gonna put it under this camera. Can you see this? The main ingredient is glutinous rice flour, and we're using the Thai versions. I do not use Japanese mochiko for this, in part because Japanese mochiko tends to be good for making, I think, uncooked mochi or mochi that I'm not too worried about the texture getting really soft. This texture actually makes a dumpling that is very kind of al dente, or in Taiwanese, we say QQ. And you can Google the terminology for QQ. There's a few articles written about it, of which one was recently written up. Luke Tsai from Eater, I think it was Eater, or no, KQED, did a series on Taiwanese food recently. And there's an article about Radical Family Farms, but there's also another article about this term called QQ. And there's also an article in New York Times from Amy Chin from years ago about the letter, and it's literally spelled the letter Q. But it refers to a kind of textural quality. And this dumpling is the epitome of that. And the glutinous rice flour that we're using, unlike the mochiko, unfortunately, that one, I think the difference I've heard, and I've written this up in the thing, is that this is milled from steamed glutinous rice, and then the other one is milled from dry rice. So it creates a different texture, perhaps. But I'm gonna get this dough kind of ready, and while we get this dough ready, I'll talk about other aspects of this. But don't forget, if you have any questions, you can always unmute yourself and ask. And if there's anyone here I wonder if there's anyone here cooking along, and if anyone is, curious to know how far along you are and if you're ahead of me or not. I'm just starting everything pretty much. But I am starting with, and I feel like I should move this. So I have everything on trays right now, so I can kind of move it under the camera. And so if you can see in here, I'm making that mother dough if you have the recipe. And I'm gonna move these flowers. These are also from Radical Family Farm. And I'm gonna turn this on. So this is the mother dough that I was talking about. This dough is so gummy and sticky, and it gets kind of messy. So, but we need this mother dough to help. So this is about 50 grams of glutinous rice flour. And then I'm going to put in 50 grams, so 1-to-1 of the 50 grams of hot water. This is boiled hot water. And then I'm gonna mix that together. It's gonna be really hot. So I'm gonna use a spoon really quick to kind of pull it together. And it gets quite sticky. But once I have it kind of in a lump and ready to go, and get all the dry bits together. And because it's hot, I'm using a spoon right now, but quickly I'm gonna form it by hand. I can feel that. I just want to make sure that it's kind of all the dry bits are.
So why do you use hot
incorporated.
water, Henry?
So if you don't use hot water for some reason, it doesn't pull together and create that really cute thing.
Uh-huh.
And so this mother dough is going to become a gooey glue thing that we use to pull together the rest of the dough. Because clearly this is not enough dough here. And I'm not 100% sure, Linda, but if you know, I just know that if it's not really hot, it does not come together.
Interesting. I do not know.
Okay, and I don't know the terminology in Taiwanese nor Mandarin, but there's another thing about this that is, if it's the opposite of QQ, that's the word that I'm not sure, but the opposite word to QQ is something about how it sticks in your teeth. So you want it to be chewy and al dente, but also come off your teeth. And if you don't do it that way, it gets sticky up against your teeth, and then that's
Like
no
gummy.
good. Gummy, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's always the big challenge here. So here's the pot is boiling now, and let me get this off.
I think the hot water is, if I have to take a guess, it's probably to achieve the gelation point for rice.
Oh,
yeah.
yes,
So then it gets to be more like a gel.
And if this is correct, then if that is what it is, then it coincides with what that Mochiko versus the Thai brand.
Yeah.
And these bags that you find at the Asian grocery stores or other grocery stores, these are, the green one is the glutinous rice, and the red one is regular rice, and then or maybe the blue one. Anyway, okay.
Done that mistake before.
Yeah, but by brand, even across brands, they have this convention. So the green one is always the one you want for this. So that's the mother. I just dropped it into the water, if you can see. And I'm gonna let it cook through, and I made it flat so that it cooks through evenly, so it doesn't have any dry parts in the middle. But that's a great point that you just made. That makes sense about the rice. You need to do that to get to that gelatinous stage. So while that's going,
I have in the past worked with recipes that didn't ask for this mother dough step, just kind of like hot water on glutinous rice flour.
yes,
This produce a more QQ product.
So the thing is, in Taiwan, when I learned how to make this from my aunt, and I should kind of chat about the story about this dumpling and why I like making it, or why.
We just lost you, Henry. Can you hear us? Henry?
Oh no, I tried to change the spotlight and then I muted him by accident. Henry, can you unmute, please?
Okay.
I'm
Hello?
so sorry. Okay, good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
What did you hear me last say? Sorry.
About your aunts.
Okay, so I should say, but Linda's point about the mother not having made the mother, just putting hot water directly into the dough, into the flour. In Taiwan, when I learned how to make this, we never did this mother thing, but and there are certain ingredients, like there's in Taiwan, there's so many that I've learned all these different dishes from my aunt, and like there's so many different flours from different things, like sweet potato, glutinous rice flour, or there's other kind of rices that just don't exist here, and I cannot match those ingredients to what I have here. So the way I learned it in Taiwan, which is without doing this mother dough, is I can't achieve here for some reason in the same way. So this really does help me get to that. So I'm not sure, but it's worth testing more. Okay, so this mother, while that cooks, I'm gonna move it over here and get the rest of the dough ready. And so I'm having my recipe because I don't need to make a lot today. And then this one here, So I need 175 grams.
What is that?
I'm just doing, I'm having the recipe.
Ah, 175 grams of glutinous rice flour.
Correct. So I have this and this is for the main dough. So once that one is done, I'm gonna cut it up and mix it into here. And as well, make just the main dough. So let's see, I think this is pretty much done. I'm gonna test it with scissors here, and I'm gonna cut it open, and I can tell, sorry, I don't have this in front of you in the camera. I can tell that it's cooked all the way through. So I'm gonna
Did it
turn that
float
off.
up? Yeah, it floated.
It has floated up,
Mhm.
and can you see that in there?
I love your pot.
Somehow.
It's great. Very clever.
And then sorry guys, I was working up until now at my day job, and then I didn't get this all together. Where are the trays? Okay. Let's see. So then next, let's just, I'll once I start making the dough, I'll chat a little bit better about what this dumpling is and why we're doing it. Let's see. So from the overhead shot, let's set this. So this dough is pretty simple in terms of ingredients and what we're putting in it.
Can you move your plate, your tray closer to your burner so we can see it more?
Great. Like
Thank
that?
you. Yeah, that's
Okay. So I am gonna go ahead. I have I'm having my recipe, but this is the sugar component. This dough is really heavy handed. So the filling needs to be really intense, and the dough needs some sweetness to it to kind of bring out some of the flavors. But so that's sugar. I use some oil. And then this is the nettle puree. So I'm using stinging nettle. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a weed, or known to be a weed, used all over found all over the world. Whether or not people eat it anymore, it's considered a superfood, so it's really nutrient dense. I'm just eyeballing it here, but that's probably about 4 or 5 tablespoons worth of puree. It's pretty wet. I just blanched this nettle, and then I ran it through a food processor, and and then I froze it. Okay, so this is the dough, the mother dough.
In your recipe,
And
you added some baking soda. What is that for?
oh, I think I need to amend that. I don't need, ignore that. I
Okay.
don't do that anymore. I forget what that one was about. So this is in here now, and it's hot, and I just need to start kneading it through. And I'm relying on the moisture from the nettle, and I'm relying on the moisture from the mother dough, that mother piece that I put in there, because you don't want this to get too wet. And I need to get a pastry scraper, but I eyeball this a little bit. You can follow the recipe that you have there, but I am going to stick this in here and get out some more. I think it needs some more moisture and color, and then okay, so the cultural significance of this dumpling are it's known to be a Hakka thing. And if you're not familiar with the Hakka are originally from northern China. the name Hakka itself literally means guest or no homeland. And over the centuries in China, they were pushed down to the south. So there's an area in Guangdong in Canton called Meizhou, which is known to be the center of Hakka culture. And then the Hakka after that, arriving in the south, where again, a lot of them were pushed away. And so you can find the Hakka diaspora go from, I think, all the way across the Indian Ocean in Mauritius, all the way to everywhere else. I think in Taiwan, the Hakka population traditionally is known to be about 14%. Obviously now there's a lot of mixing. My father's 100% Hakka, and even after 8 generations on the island, he is the first one to marry a non-Hakka, my mother, who's from the predominant group. So the other interesting thing about this dumpling is that it is, and I am gonna put some more hot water in here from my pot. The other thing about this dumpling is it's known to be a Hakka dumpling or a Hakka style dumpling, but then it's also known, so you can find this across the Hakka diaspora from Malaysia to China to Taiwan. However, okay, I put too much water, so I need to adjust it, and I need to get this off my hands by putting a little bit more rice flour. But the Hakka are known to make this dumpling, but quite often it's made with meat. But in Taiwan, this green dumpling is always made vegan. And the ingredients, as you know from the recipe packet, are that it is shallots, daikon, which the radish, and it's dehydrated daikon, and shiitake mushrooms. The daikon itself is interesting because this particular style of dehydrating the radish is only found in, I think, Taiwan, and now I know Japan and parts of Fujian province. Everywhere else, it's made with other ingredients on the inside, including meat. But because in Taiwan, it's known to be a vegan thing, it's often sold outside of Buddhist temples. And this is the predominant dish that you eat when you do, what do you call it? Ancestor worship or for Qingming Jie. So, okay, so that might be getting closer. Is there anyone that's making this? I'm curious, or has made it before?
How much water do you put in, or how much flour did you add, rice flour did you add on, and what are you looking for to make sure that it's the right consistency?
So let's see. To get the right consistency, yeah, I have to go back and forth a little bit. And I can tell right now, this is definitely too wet. And so it's a little bit cute. It's not exactly right. So I'm gonna, and it starts to get sticky. So it's good to have a pastry cutter or a pastry thing. If I had a silicone one and was working in a bowl to scrape it out, it's good too.
Are you working it so until it doesn't stick to your hands?
Correct. So I'm constantly going to want to scrape it up like this because it gets really gummy. And then keep working it till I can feel that it's pretty smooth and that it's pretty smooth. Oops. And that it gives back and forth. Does that make sense? A little bit. It's definitely very different from working with flour dough, if that's something that you're used to. And then I'll continue to have to scrape it up and work it.
Yeah, Sarah and I made the dumpling last year with you, and I remember, I think ours was a little too dry, so we had to keep
Too dry?
water. Yeah.
And how was it when you made the final steaming?
I mean, there was some
Was
QQ.
it gummy?
I think it tasted good, but the presentation wasn't there.
Okay. Yeah, and if you over steam and the dough is not exactly right, it can kind of get get thin and kind of reveal the innards instead of have a smooth texture on the outside, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'm close to being there, and I'm gonna let it be. But can you see? So it's not totally sticking to me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, Linda's asking questions right now. Linda is, if you don't know her on Instagram, she's Flavor Explosions. And she put together this class series for Radical Family Farms. And she's Chinese Malaysian. And there's a lot of gue in Malaysia, I feel like, coming out of that region. And do you have a similar situation about this dough like this?
Yeah, except that we don't do the mother dough.
Right.
I don't think the Malaysian prioritize QQ that much as much as the Taiwanese do.
Yeah, the Taiwanese tend to get obsessive about it. And I always joke that people will often say, not how does it taste as the first thing, but they'll often say, is it QQ?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, it's a cultural thing, right? It's the food is one of the sensory, you know, textural sensory effect is a very, very important element of Asian, you know, Chinese food.
Yeah.
Of course, the not so sweet.
So the dough is ready, and now we're gonna go to the filling. Talk about the filling a little bit. Okay.
Just for the dough really quick, it's kind of hard to describe over a video, but how elastic does it feel?
So can you see this? So you know how do you work with regular flour dough often? What wheat flour dough often?
Sometimes, yeah.
So like that kind of dough, and because you're always working that gluten structure, you're always trying to get it to, you know, hold together somewhat when you're pulling it apart, right? So that it's always smooth. This, when you start to pull it, will reveal too much moisture and it's too sticky and gummy. So this kind of loose thing, I don't love this. It's not totally ideal. I'd rather have it have this kind of feel throughout, but it's sometimes a little hard to achieve. So I can kind of tell I'm not gonna fully get there with this one today. So I'm gonna bring it to a level of tightness. Like it won't be as bouncy as a wheat flour one, but it should give back some. It should not just sink in. Are you making the dough right now out of curiosity?
No, I was gonna do it in a couple weeks.
Oh, no problem, no problem. If you were doing it right now, I was gonna ask you, what does it feel like right now to you?
Does it feel like Play-Doh, I guess? Yeah.
It feels like Play-Doh, but and I haven't really touched real Play-Doh in a long time, but it's a little softer than real Play-Doh.
Maybe it looks pretty like soft. I think like usually when I make like just like all-purpose flour kind of dumpling dough, it's like pretty dense and pretty elastic.
It's much tighter and denser and more elastic. Yeah, because don't forget, there's no gluten in here, obviously, except for it's called glutinous rice. I don't know exactly why I came up with that moniker, but anyway, okay. So this is, but that's a great question. So, and maybe in a moment when we get to the wrapping, it'll reveal itself. I'll be able to talk about that textural quality, what it should be like when we're doing that. How are we doing on time?
We have 30 minutes. You're doing pretty well.
Okay. So this is the part that I was supposed to, I had said in the email that I was gonna have done, but that I was gonna already have done the filling, which I have not done yet. So let me do that really quick.
That's okay. I want to see it all.
I know. We have 3 minutes. So.
Okay. So can you see my board here?
Yeah.
So part of what we're gonna do at Radical Family Farms is the CSA as well. Leslie and team last year built out dehydration area for different vegetables because there are some chefs and customers like me who want some things dehydrated. And for example, these are from Leslie from Radical Family Farms. These are the daikon that I have in hand right now, or not daikon, but radishes.
Yeah, Korean radishes.
And I know it's interesting on the cultural front too. In the US, we often say daikon, and in Chinese, it's lobo, and in Taiwanese dialect, something else. But in Taiwan, it's just funny because we were also a part of a colony of Japan from 1898 to 1945. So we use a lot of Japanese words, including daikon. And so I'm used to saying it, but I know other people aren't saying it that way for different cultural reasons. But so that's the daikon from Leslie. And in the packet, you saw that how I would salt it, rinse it, and dry it. I'll do that right here in this apartment. I have these really big windows that it's hard to block out the light. And I usually have trays of them out. But I also happen to have a stash of, and if you can see here, the dehydrated daikon. So at Radical Family Farms, one day we'll get to shredding and dehydrating the daikon whole. We'll get to doing it in different ways. But this is, the thing about daikon, and I know the sunlight's hitting it right now, but the thing about radish, and I wish I put a link in here for it, but has anyone seen Flavorful Origins? It's a Netflix series from China. Google that, and there's a whole show, and they're only like 10-15 minutes about dehydrating radish like this. And not only in this format, but they don't actually talk about the shredded kind because this is uncommon in that part of China. But the reason we dehydrate things is similarly to the mushrooms, which is also in the recipe, is that it really intensifies the flavors. And there's something about sunlight, not just dehydrating indoors, but dehydrating with sun, that brings out different flavors. And there's a whole science behind that. And they talk about it in that show. And I'm sure we can do some more research on why. But this is white radish that with time in the sun, and I do it here in the apartment, the one that I have pictures of when I can't get a hold of this and I do it here, I don't have the bandwidth, but I'll do it here indoors for 3 or 4 days in the sunlight, and it starts to get that sour smell, which this definitely has. And I'm gonna go ahead and rinse a little bit of this in a second. Over here, I'm gonna show you, I've had this soaking, and it's hard to see. Can you see that? These mushrooms I've been soaking for about an hour. So the thing about soaking mushrooms is, and I know I've learned from some really anal retentive people, but they are obsessed with not soaking more than 30 minutes or 45 minutes because why lose all the flavor of your nice mushrooms. I'm cutting off right now the stem on that one's okay, because it's a little woodier and I'll save it for later. And I will save this liquid for cooking with. But I'm not too worried about losing too much flavor because I'll not use all of this, but I'll save this liquid later anyway. But yeah, but I'll use some of it for cooking now as well. So let's see, what can you see? This lighting. So I'm gonna cut. So this dumpling is really has to be kind of intense flavor-wise on the inside because of the way the dough is so gummy and dense. when I refer to this being eaten for tomb sweeping day with your family, these are pretty large sized dumplings. Or if you're at a Buddhist temple in Taiwan, you will always find women selling these outside. And that's all related to not eating meat in the afterlife or the but I cut these pretty small just to be able to get them into the, but the point is these dumplings are really heavy. So when I make them to eat for folks, I tend to kind of make them small because you can eat one and it's pretty dense and gut wrenching. So this is, and it's funny because when I started making this here in the States and serving it to people, and I will do it similarly to the recipe that I wrote out. We'll do it in other colors with beets or with other things. And in those situations, those are meant to be okay to eat with meat inside. But in Taiwan, for some reason, because the green version is of the purvey of Buddhist vegetarians, it's sacrilege to eat this.
Right. So people, you know, if you're a vegetarian, they look at it and they say, "Oh, that's green, it's vegetarian."
Yes.
You don't have to like sign this.
But it's funny because I've had this now before from other friends who make it from other parts of the diaspora. They're like, we put ground pork in it. We put,
Yeah.
I'm
I
like,
think we put
oh,
dry
no.
shrimp in it.
Okay, in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is shallot, also an incredibly important ingredient in Taiwan and maybe other parts of the Chinese regional cuisines. But in Taiwan, for some reason, I just feel like it's just really, really important to.
Yeah, I don't think we use enough shallots in America.
Yeah, it's funny. Shallots are so sweet.
Yeah.
And we tend to have shallot oil or fried shallots for toppings, or shallots for every single dish. I feel like so many, even cookies. Even cookies and sweets will often have shallots or shallot oil. Okay, so this is the shallot. I'm just gonna make a small batch so we can get to wrapping and seeing how to do this. And I need to go to the sink and I'm gonna go rinse out this a little bit and squeeze out the water. I'll be right back. And then.
Why is it salty?
It's funky.
Oh, funky.
Yeah, it's a little bit funky.
Is it
But
fermented?
you know what? No, it's simply dried.
Interesting.
So I'm not sure actually. But you know what? Now that I'm tasting it, it seems fine without rinsing too much. It's pretty flavorless, but it has a very interesting texture. Okay, is this too close?
No, can you push it further? Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, great. And let's see. So we're gonna do a quick, that's probably too much oil.
Can you use any radish? Because, you know, Leslie puts out a lot of different kinds of radish. Have you tried like the purple one, the Korean one?
Yes, so that was the thing. For this class, I was going to, okay. Also, another quick note, for alliums like this, like onions and shallots, I usually do it very low and do it for a really long time, just to get the sweetness and to really caramelize it. But because I didn't do this ahead of time and we want to get to wrapping, I'm gonna do it really slowly. I mean, really quickly and not worry about it too much, but I'm gonna kind of let this cook really quickly. So I did not have time for it. But for example, these are all from Radical Family Farms. And I was going to dehydrate them this weekend. And then what happened was it was really overcast the last few days. So I just never got around to it. And I was like, okay, I didn't do it today. So, but yes, it would be fun to try to play around with those and see
Henry,
what
I
the
think
difference is with flavor.
something happened with your video.
Oh.
It's back. It's back.
Okay. Okay, so I am going to say the shallots are done. And then I'm gonna put in, I'm not gonna rinse this, but this is pretty wet, right? This is the daikon that's been soaked. And then I am going to put in a handful of the shiitake mushrooms. Sometimes if I do this, I may do it for a really long time. But it's, anyway, let's do it. We're gonna do it kind of quickly. I usually love to waste time and take 5 hours to do everything that it takes other people to do.
It tastes
And a couple
amazing.
But here's the sugar. Probably too much. This is, I'm using soy sauce today. And like any, if you guys are making other kinds of dumplings in general, or you have the wherewithal, you always consider the saltiness and the sweetness or the seasoning of your filling vis-a-vis the dough, because the dough will take away some of that that seasoning. So you want to balance it out. And again, I've mentioned this before, but this dough is so dense and chewy that you really want the filling to really kind of punch out. And because the ingredients are so few, I do kind of intensify them. This is white pepper, and I'm really putting a lot. I mean, this is probably too much. Well, okay, I don't have to put it all. But the white pepper really helps it come out into the nose when you're eating, which is important. But anyway, more or less, this is what it'll look like. And then I want you to taste your filling and then think about what that dough might be like. And if you've not had this, just think of mochi in general, like an unseasoned mochi that's just this chewy thing. And then I get it kind of dry like that, and that's probably dry enough. Turn it off, and then put it in here. And then I'm gonna take this thing away for a moment. And then we have that. Oh gosh, the light. Okay. And then, let's see. I'm gonna, forgive me, sorry. This is so good. That way, I think you can see the table better.
Oh, it looks fine. You look great.
Really? You can see? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're ready to wrap.
So wish we could taste it. So it's very intensely salty and sweet. Right.
Salty and sweet, yeah.
And
And
do you
then this
cool
is
it
the,
before you wrap it?
yeah, normally I would have this cold or cool, but it's okay. And then I can't see if you can tell how many grams this is. No, okay. But bamboo, we're using banana leaves here to do this. And these are already pre-cut and washed. And this ridge side is the bottom, and then the top is the indented side, the indented ridges. And this is gonna be the smoother side, the less sticky side, which is important, especially for this dumpling. And we are going to, and I also am going to have, and this is important, you always want to have a little bit of oil on hand because it's so sticky and gummy that it helps to have this on your hands when you're forming the dumpling. And get a basket ready here. And I am gonna do mini ones. So a standard size one that you might want to, that you might find on the street in it would be the dough wise about 45 or 50 grams. Because I'm making mini ones here, I am, and I'm trying, see how it kind of sticks to my finger here? I don't love this, but it's okay. And I'm just gonna try to keep it together for the rest of it, the duration. So I'm kind of have my hands a little bit dry from the powder. And then I'm going to kind of, unlike regular wheat flour dumplings, you cannot pull this. Pulling it is not a great thing because there's no gluten in it and it'll fall apart. So what I'm trying to do here, if it's possible to tell, is I'm just gently making a cup. If you can kind of see that. And as I turn it, I'm making the edges thinner and thinner and leaving that fat pad in the middle. Similar to if you're doing your own doughs, for wheat doughs for dumplings. And then
And you don't use a dowel or a rolling pin.
no, just your hands. So
cool. That's tiny.
and then I know this is a little bit small, and I don't even think I measured it. Weighed it. Okay, let's see. That's probably a lot. Okay, and then I'm starting to push it in, but I'm not pulling because the pulling is too dangerous. It'll break apart. So I'm slowly, I can't tell what you can see.
Oh, it's perfect.
So I'm coming together, I'm not pulling it too much. I'm feeling, because I want maximum filling. Otherwise, it tastes like you're just eating mochi or kue, for mixing all the terminologies, the languages. But
no wonder your dumpling tastes so good. It's all filling.
so no, because
that's amazing. I was
so
like,
I don't fuss too much with the closure at the end sometimes, simply because it's a frustrating dumpling. Just kidding. And then and then taking this, and that's the closed end, and then that is the bottom.
looks perfect. Nobody knows. Yeah.
And then when this, and it's forgiving, oops, sorry, I just hit this one. And it's forgiving because when it steams, it melds down to nothing. Okay, should I steam them for the class even though we're not having them?
Yeah.
Or,
I
okay,
would
then I'm gonna turn on the steamer. Hold on, and then.
Have you ever tried microwaving it?
I don't know. That's great.
You know, because a lot of folks microwave their mochi, so I don't know.
Right, I know. And
But it might
grilling
explode.
the Japanese mochi also is grilled.
Oh yeah.
It is interesting. Just taking it from, I don't know. Yeah, the science behind all of that is interesting. And the other interesting thing about this,
Can you show it closer to the cutting board? You're being blocked. Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Sometimes we use too much dough and not enough filling.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not
So
pooling, you know. And
can you see the thickness,
yeah,
the edge thinness here? And this is starting to. And so another, I was talking about this with my uncle, one of my uncles, because I was like, why is it called cornerstone or chukake? And no one, and I'm illiterate in Chinese characters, so it's hard for me to do that research on my own, but I rely on others to do it for me or to talk it out. And the funny thing about one of the funniest things I heard. Oh no, I don't know if it's funny, but I've not corroborated this anywhere. But the other reason he says it could be called cornerstone dumpling is because if you see the fibers in here in the dough, and when you steam it, it sometimes becomes more obvious. He's like, that's like mud houses, like mud bricks, like adobe. So this must be from that terminology. But then I found one more academic interpretation that was in English about why it was called that. And then that one came up with the idea that these are all the weeds that you find around a house. So just go out to the side of your house and you can find mugwort, you can find cudweed, you can find nettle, and obviously nettle is something that's common to be found everywhere around the world, whether or not people eat it. And so that's another one.
When you're closing the dumpling like this, are you mainly pulling from or squeezing from the top? Like, do you end up with a thick bottom or?
So that's why when you see me doing, here, I'm gonna do one more. I'll do another one. So the reason that what you see me doing is, I'm gonna take off my glasses because I can't see that close. So I'm kind of flattening it with the palm of my hand really quickly, but see this, I'm doing the edges thinner. Can you see that? I'm barely touching the middle. I'm not flattening the middle at all. I'm just flattening the edges. And the reason I'm doing this, and similarly to wheat flour doughs, if you're doing your own dumplings, you are often told to just do the edges, flatten the edges, not the middle, because presumably you're doubling up the edges on, and then you want, so once I put the fill, so if you can kind of see the cross section, let me see. It's fatter down here, and then it's thinner at the edges. And then what happens is it's just so you know what I'm doing to off camera, I'm dipping my hands in this oil because it's starting to stick. And so that really helps me kind of keep it together. And then while I fill it, after I fill it, Okay, that's a little ambitious. Okay, that's too much. I'm gonna show you another way to fold it that's considered classic, which is you reveal that ridge. You reveal that thinner edge, and then but it makes more sense, I think. So see how the fat pad below, I'm still not really dealing with it. I'm not making that thinner in any way, but now I'm doubling up this edge. But then this is tricky because then I can't hide my mistakes underneath, because then you're serving people something that needs to look right on top. But does that make sense a little bit? Because now this kind of doubled up edge has the thin parts that you've kind of made smaller, and then the fat pad down here in the middle remains the same thickness, more or less.
Yeah, I think I get it.
And honestly, if we were doing this in a group class situation where everyone had dough in their hands, we could go around and kind of test and see who has the right dough. And right now I can tell you, people, this is not a good one. It's so sticky. Okay, so
We can tell.
you can tell.
You can tell.
I can tell. Okay, so there's that. There's 3 here. This one, so this is a classic shape also. This kind of, even though it looks kind of like a regular dumpling, it's actually usually more dinosaur looking and roundish, but I'm not getting, and as you can tell, I'm pulling it apart and getting stuck. Yeah.
It's not very forgiving.
No, that's why I like the other method where you put it underneath and hide it.
Just plop it the other way.
Yeah, so for this one, but the good thing about it is this is a steamed dumpling. It's not boiled, so nothing will fall out, actually. At least nothing will fall out. But you do want it to be fully contained. So there.
There, perfect.
There, it's contained now. Okay, I'm gonna put these on the steamer, and these are pretty tiny, so I'm just gonna do it for 5 minutes.
That's amazing.
Okay. And so that's basically it. But the idea behind this too is, in this class, is to kind of figure out how to use all the different ingredients that you're getting in your CSA box. And for example, today, you know, I could have achieved getting all of these shredded and dehydrated. One day we'll have it 100% from Radical Family Farms. Today, I do have the nettle is from Radical Family Farms. I don't know how much stinging nettle comes out of the ground. There, I know this is Leslie's first year to have it on the farm. And then shallots, I saw there are some shallots that are popping out from the farm too. So if that comes down the road, maybe eventually you'll start plugging trees to grow shiitake mushrooms. Then we can have 100% of the ingredients, except for the rice, maybe the glutinous rice, come from Radical Family Farms. But the idea was to kind of highlight an ingredient and to showcase how it might be used. And today the idea was to focus on the long radish, or any of the radishes, more or less. So,
which we will be having more of as fall approaches
over time. And so, and you have on the recipe, I don't know if my email's on there, but my Instagram handle is on there, and you're always welcome to DM me there if you have questions about this dumpling or any dumplings.
You can also
So-
put the radish in a dehydrator, right?
So that's the thing is you can put it through a dehydrator, but there's something about the sun.
Huh.
The sun's interaction with the vegetable is supposed to actually make it have some kind of reaction that creates some kind of flavor.
Funkiness, yeah. And
Funkiness,
very
yeah.
umami laden. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, if you didn't catch this earlier, folks, look up Flavorful Origins. It's that mainland Chinese cooking series. The first season was about Chaosan in southern China, and I think that's the season where they talk about dehydrating radish and what is actually the science behind what's happening when the sun dehydrates it.
Interesting.
So, and why it creates a specific flavor. Because a whole daikon, and I just, and Leslie and Linda and I have had this conversation before, and we just have to test it out. But, you know, people hang whole daikon, like big ones, and I'm used to getting them from my aunt in Taiwan, whole ones dehydrated, and she does it in her driveway, apparently, and they become tiny. They become the size of a hot dog from this giant thing. After, I don't know, 2 weeks of dehydrating that way. And the flavor becomes really intensified. That kind of, you know how radish sometimes has that kind of funky, farty smell? And so I think when it dehydrates, and maybe with the sun as well, specifically, it gets a really unique flavor.
Does it
profile.
reduce? What is the reduction? Is it like if I cut it to 1 inch, it will reduce down to a 1/4 inch, or is it half?
So if you see the photos that I have in the recipe, and those are times that I have done it and dehydrated it in my own apartment in full sun for up to 5 days is the longest I've done it. And I probably have it written down somewhere how much it weighed when I started and then how much it weighed in the end. And it's huge reduction. It's
and it's not salted.
Like,
it's not salted, no other seasoning, right?
Yeah, so these from Taiwan, the ones that are already done, and then the Japanese ones, but now that we know that the Japanese ones look really that you can find at the Japanese grocery store look really white. And all of the ones from Taiwan or Fujian, which is the one that I get at New Meiwa on the Richmond district, are really yellow. So, and the ones I've done here in the apartment, I did salt it because I needed to speed up the process. And then I rinsed it heavily and then dehydrated it. And those start to get yellow also. So maybe the whiter version is done in an industrial dehydrator without sun, maybe, I don't know. Let's see. And that looks like.
Yeah, they didn't get tan.
Yeah, they didn't get that tan color. So it looks done.
Oh my goodness.
They look
and
great.
So
Yeah.
So it looks like this. It's really hot. And so this is also usually eaten room temperature, not hot, because it's usually sold on the street. And it's, or something that you're carry around and take to picnics, or if you're doing Qingmingjie, which is the ancestor tomb sweeping days where the family gets together, goes to the familial mausoleums and sweep, clean, and gather with family. And so the significance of this is that it's sticky, it's about unity, and at least in Taiwan and perhaps southern Fujian province, whereas the Hokkien version, not the strictly Hakka aspect to it, it's vegan because of Buddhism.
That's great.
So that's it.
Wow.
Wonderful.
You made
And
in an hour, Henry. That's
I
amazing.
know.
any questions or any thoughts?
No, but I need to try this again. I did it once live cooking along, and I want to take time to do it.
Leslie, I've done this, help Henry fold these dumplings for, I don't know, probably like I've done like maybe 300-400 dumplings with him to date. I never knew that's the way to stuff it. So it was really good to watch him.
Oh, really?
Show the way you stuff it with the thickness and the thinness. This was the amount of detail that he's sharing is just amazing.
Yeah.
This looks so good. I'm texting my parents right now and telling them I'm mad at them. We never had this growing up for some reason.
Are you
This is-
Taiwanese?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's really hard. So I've done this at events and where there's older Taiwanese people and right now with Taiwanese food coming into its own, and people reviving it or talking about it. Because, a lot of the Taiwanese immigrants who came to this country starting in the 60s and 70s weren't necessarily in food related worlds, it was, and so we didn't bring this kind of stuff and no one was making this kind of stuff. It wasn't, I feel like I grew up in the States and was eating mostly Cantonese Chinese food or Hunan or Sichuan. And so now that all of these foods are coming into the world for a wider audience, and I've made these for special events or for different activities, and I've had people come up to me and cry and say, I haven't had this in 20 years, or I'm not used to seeing this anywhere. Like, why do you have this? Or why are you making this? And my aunt is intense Buddhist and she's really into cooking. So when I went to Taiwan, whenever I go to Taiwan, but when I went to Taiwan last in earnest, wanted to learn how to make things, this was the one thing she was obsessed with me figuring out how to do right. And years later, I'm still messing it up. But so yeah, this is tell your parents that you're working on learning how to make this.
That's
be happy.
exciting.
It's one of the most delicious dumplings out there. Yeah, I think that it even is better than like a hakao, which is probably up there, right? But it's really, really good. It's amazing.
And
I've
it's
never met anyone that doesn't like it.
and if you have any friends that are gluten intolerant or vegan, use gluten-free tamari instead of gluten-free tamari will often have higher sodium than regular soy sauce, so which has some wheat in it. So just adjust a little bit and make sure you're tasting it. But the nice thing about this is it's naturally gluten-free because of the dumpling dough. And if you follow the recipe and start getting used to playing around with this more often, if you do, you saw me put in the nettle puree, for example, but if you sub mashed up beets or mashed up sweet potato or pumpkin, and you mix up your fillings, you can come up with 5 million different things. And if you are into this, you can also buy molds. How do you call them? Kue molds, which like in Southeast Asia, a lot of the angku kue, which is the red turtle shape.
Or peng kue.
And so there's different molds you can use to make these too, which is fun. But Taiwan is so kind of country bumpkinish, I feel like. Everything is just the same round shape. Nothing's fancy. So yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
I want to take a picture of, can you move your steam basket further up so I can take a picture of, yes. Yeah, ours didn't look as pretty, but the filling and everything, the taste was amazing. We made it.
I can imagine that I think, yeah, if it doesn't stay like this, it starts to flatten out and get really, start to ooze into the flatness. Okay, I think it's cool enough I can taste it. So you can see it's kind of that
Ooh.
Mm.
Ooh.
So
Oh, that's
let
torture.
me see. Wow, it's not sticking to my teeth, thankfully, and it's really grassy.
That's wonderful.
The herbaceous aspect is nice.
There's 2 bites, huh?
This one's 2 bites. Yeah.
Well, looks really good.
Usually they're as big as your palm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, really? At the outside the Buddhist temples?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's a whole dinner by itself.
And they're usually like $1 US, $1 maybe,
Mhm.
30 NT or something like that.
Lovely.
And the white pepper is really intense.
Is
I
it
didn't season
supposed-
this properly.
Is it that way? I know that you're always like white pepper forward.
I'm scared because I don't taste white pepper, ginger, or garlic anymore because I always put so much in everything. So I have to moderate or have a taste tester next to me, especially I'm serving other people. So but yeah, it's fun to do. It's not common to find, and you can't really buy it anywhere. I think in the last slew of Taiwanese articles, between KQED, Eater, and I think SF Chronicle recently wrote something about Taiwanese food here in the Bay. I do think one of the businesses talked about making this, but they are in Cupertino maybe or Sunnyvale. But I'm curious to. I feel like this is the kind of thing you're only gonna get with Taiwanese aunties selling it to friends, and at least here in the States. And when I was in LA, no, I mean I after getting vaccinated, I went to see my parents for. It ended up being 2 months I spent with them, and I made this 3 times, and my mom and dad were giving it away to their friends, and
Oh.
who hadn't had it in a long time either.
Wow.
So it's kind of fun.
Does it freeze well? How you freeze it before you steam?
I have never frozen it, so I don't know that. I'm not sure, but that's the next test. Is do you fully cook it and then freeze it, or
I
do
froze
you?
it the last time when we did Kylie's event. I froze it and then re-steam it.
But you steamed it and then froze it and re-steamed it, or you left it raw and then froze it and then steamed it
Raw
from frozen raw.
Raw frozen.
Oh,
was-
and it was okay.
Well, when you steam it, it has kind of like a soft, wettish exterior on the outside.
Okay,
It tastes good. It's not as beautiful, but it tastes good.
So I've made these for events before, and so instead of the freezing thing like I'll do with my regular dumplings, I end up I'll make these the last thing to make, and then I will just refrigerate them and then steam them, simply because I've never done it before and I'm scared. So but I save these to be the last thing that I make so that it's the freshest thing before I go to cook.
Mhm.
But that's a good thing to test next
You should
time.
test on these too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
probably.
I'd probably eat them.
Wonderful. Such a wonderful session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Henry. You'll have to come up here. We haven't really had so much hot weather. On Monday it was 100 degrees, but other than that, haven't had really good sun drying weather here. But when we do, we need to all have a radish shredding party.
Yeah, let's do some research before doing that.
Okay.
Or we'll just go up there and test it all out and see how the results are like.
I would say dry it whole, then I have to cut it.
No, the whole thing is about getting this, right? We want to get the stringy thing. And the other test is to buy the Japanese one now and try that. Because I didn't know that the Japanese use this until Linda, you found it.
And the Koreans as well, apparently. So
it's so funny. No Chinese people I know this except for the Taiwanese.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
On Leslie's on the Radical Farms website, there's a recipe by Brad that uses the dried ones, the Korean dried ones.
The shredded also?
This is a Chinese chunkyo radish, but I think I don't know, did he shred them or do them whole? On the recipe?
He did cut them.
Oh.
Yeah, in that recipe.
Okay.
But
Is
we'll
it a
find out.
Korean recipe?
No, it was just a sun-dried radish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I have to look at it.
Great. Well, next month
Great.
it's his turn. It's Brett's turn as well as Adrian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right.
Yeah.
So
What is
this
he making next time?
A kind of pickle. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Fermented kimchi of some sort. And
Okay.
then Adrian is also doing I think one is Japanese style fermentation and one is Japanese Korean style fermentation.
Uh-huh. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna answer your question earlier in my own, since I'm touching the stove and handling it right now, wondering what I'm gonna do. I have made this dough in advance and frozen it and let it thaw out and then worked with it. So I have done that.
Okay.
So I at least know that. So anyway, okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
All
Henry.
right.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking time out to put together the recipe, and we will have this recorded. I'll send out the link when it's done processing for you to have.
Okay, great.
Great. And Stephen, if when you make it, send us a picture.
I will.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to try it out.
Stephen,
Yeah.
are you the one that I DM'd with about this?
Yeah, I was the one that I was taking pictures and DMing you pictures
Okay,
of
great.
nettles.
So Stephen has mugwort and nettle growing in his yard.
Oh, okay.
And then
Welcome to the club.
I know. And Stephen, the photo I showed you of my mugwort pot that has the two kinds of mugwort in it, the single leaf and then the more the more whatever one, handy one, that is from Linda, who's moderating here. And
Oh, cool.
she's been growing it she has a plot in Fort Mason in the garden, but she's also lives on the 10th floor of a high-rise building and grows it on her balcony.
Yeah.
It's prolific, right?
Oh yeah, I was told that mugwort should be in a pot because it's so prolific, just like nettle. So I have a pot of nettle and a pot of mugwort in my 10th floor apartment, my sky garden.
That's cool. It seems to grow anywhere.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
those are the only things that grow on with me. So yeah, but I actually use them and mint for my mojito. No.
Well, thanks. I'm nice to meet you here.
Cool.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you
And
so
let me
much.
know how it goes. Yeah.
All
Cool.
right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Henry.
Okay.
Thank
Okay, take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks
have
for
a-
hosting this.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.